Hi, welcome to Overlanding from home. My name is Anton. I'm an avid overlander, lover of nature, and humanitarian by heart. The past while, I've always been interested in the outdoors, and I want to hear about other people's experiences and their rigs. Yes, the big rigs, the small rigs, everything they've done to design them and how they plan it. I hope you enjoy listening. Let's find out who today's guest is. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for signing in again and listening to these great podcasts. I mean, I, for one, am learning a lot. I'm really enjoying listening to these amazing stories in different places and different scenarios. And today, I am very happy because we have a very wonderful lady from Zimbabwe. She's done an amazing trip. Some might say a little bit crazy, but you have to be a Zimbabwean in order to do crazy because they've experienced so many different scenarios and different problems, and yet they always end up back in their country. And it's amazing. I've been to Zimbabwe a few times, and I love the people. They really love their country so much, regardless of the scenarios thrown at them. So I want to introduce today Bekker, who did a trip from, well, started off, I think, in London, began in Spain, and then ended off in Zimbabwe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I bought my van in the UK, and then traversed Europe, saying goodbye to people that I had known I'd lived in Europe for the past 20 years, and then to Barcelona, and then from the ferry from Barcelona to Morocco, and then pretty much following the West Coast.
And started the ball rolling, and so ladies and gentlemen, if you go onto Dot's page, and I'll put them all in the links below, so you can get to them. But if you go onto her page, you'll actually see a pointed dot, a numbered dot, obviously tracking all of your way down. And I want to get to what you used for all of that, but mostly. Incredible, Dot. I mean, I am one like super stoked. It is amazing to have a lady do something like this, especially in some of those regions which can be incredibly challenging on a number of levels. Not only a white lady by yourself traveling in some very treacherous, terroristic type of regions, but also, just being able to go out and do what you've done without having some massive big problems is incredible. I mean, I'm just looking at your route, and I'm incredibly jealous because I'd love to do West Africa, and I've never managed to do it. And tell me, how did you start off? I mean, when you landed in Morocco, what was your day one like?
Day one. Well, it was the end of November, because it was just 4 days before my 60th birthday. So my plan had been that I needed to be back in Africa for my 60th birthday. So I managed to do that by the skin of my teeth. I spent most of the first day going through customs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it took several hours to get through.
Welcome to Africa.
It was kind of like a good test of one's patience, and so I spent most of the first day. First of all, in Spain, they hadn't stamped me out of Spain, so I had to go and get that fixed. And then literally you just queue and wait and queue and wait and queue and wait, and then several hours of waiting for somebody to check my car. And they kept asking me, there is no system whatsoever. So they kept coming past and saying, do you have guns? And I'm like, what all white women have are gun-toting, I don't know, like...
But they know that you're from Zimbabwe, Dots. I mean, really.
I was traveling on a British passport, so they weren't quite, they hadn't even seen my passport at that stage. So, somehow they just looked at me and thought that I was carrying guns. So I don't know. I got asked that question like 3-4 times. Anyway, so yeah, my first day was pretty boring, but and then my first evening, I happened to meet up with some South Africans, Graham and Louisa Bell. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it was a great, sort of welcome back. And it was, yeah, it was great. It's still, at that time of the year, Morocco, I had this impression that Morocco was all desert. And it isn't. In fact, the north of Morocco is very green and very beautiful. And never in my life did I think that I would actually see the Atlas Mountains.
Really?
And that was a great thrill for me. Yeah, they're very beautiful.
I must admit, I mean, I think I've said that already, but I would love to do West Africa. I just, everyone, I think you're right. Everyone knows it as a desert. There's lots of nothing in between villages and towns and all sorts. And it's just so untapped. Everyone knows about the movie and bits and pieces, but how did you do your planning, Dot? I mean, obviously you had a beginning and an end, and what happened in between, it sounds like, was, well, I know that I need to do certain things, so let's just see how it works out. But what was, like, how did you have like a day-to-day itinerary, for example? Because you every time I would ask a question, you will laugh, which makes me worry that you just wing the whole thing, like, well, which way's the wind blowing today? Let's just see if we can flow downhill and save some fuel. How did you do day-to-day planning, or did you have some sort of goal?
Firstly, I want to just correct something that you said earlier on. Firstly, I'm not an auntie and I'm not a lady, but thank you very much for those sort of compliments. However, the other thing is that the whole of West Africa, or the whole of Africa, is not a terrorist zone.
Correct.
It is. There are dangerous places, but you know what? I lived in Barcelona, okay. And in the 9 months that I lived in Barcelona, there were 2 terrorist attacks. One of them killed 15 people, and twice people protested in the streets, and up to 300 people were put in hospital by their own police. So, if you're talking about danger, it's all a matter of context. And unfortunately, we only hear bad stories about Africa,
Correct.
And it's an enormous continent. It's 3 times the size of Europe.
That's right.
A lot of stuff can go wrong, and a lot of stuff goes right. But when I left, my intention was that I really absolutely believed in the warm heart of Africa, and that being the people. And I was rewarded 100%, in fact, 1,000% by that. So I just wanted to correct that. And in terms of my planning, it's an elephant. And when you look at an elephant and you say, and I would never harm an elephant. I just want you to know I happen to love them very much. But when you look at an elephant and it's like this massive task, it becomes overwhelming. And while I had this idea and I had this plan, when I started to look at it, it just became, well, I don't know. There's so much unknown and there's so much different information out there.
Yes.
So yes. I did what I call eating the elephant. And do you know how you eat an elephant?
Small bites.
Exactly. So you do it in bite-sized pieces. And what I learned to do, so I spent a month in Morocco because I wanted to get my Africa feet, because being in Africa is very different to being in Europe. So I kind of felt like I wanted to just settle down and get I can't say that I ever developed any kind of routine because I'm not a routine person. But I wanted to just develop and make sure that I was comfortable with how I was tackling things and what I needed to do and etc. So, but what I decided was that I would plan my next few stops, and I would also plan, while I was in that country, I would plan whatever visas I needed for the next countries and kind of look at the overall route for the next couple of countries. So when I was in Guinea, for instance, people were saying to me, what are you going to do about Nigeria? Because there's a big thing about getting a Nigerian visa. Yes. And I was like, I still have a couple of countries to go before I start worrying about that.
Yes, yeah, and it's true. And you're right. There's a lot of, and thank you for correcting me. You are right. It's about perception. And I have a favorite saying that I've said for many years. It's called assumptions and perceptions are deadlier than truth. And I went ahead and assumed, I wouldn't say assumed, but put out there something that was slightly off. And you are right. And I think the way that you've mentioned it now is 100% correct. You know, you can only worry about the things that are in front of you and not about what's coming. You know, and I just think it's a great way to do it. And I'm going to ask another question: is what was your navigation? You know, did you just use your phone, or did you have an actual Garmin, or did you put your finger out the window after licking it and saying, "Okay, this is going to be it today"?
I navigated on my phone, and the one thing that I would tell anybody else who's doing that: make sure that you have a few spare phones, because the heat in West Africa is just phenomenal. And the heat that a map generates while you're driving on the phone as well. So I burnt out a number of batteries.
Really?
So I just use my phone. But you also have to, it is Africa. So I used my phone, but I used various apps. So one of the apps that I used was maps.me.
Yes.
And I used that because I could download the map for the country. So you can download maps by country that you need, and you can navigate offline. And that was really important to me because there were vast swathes of country that I went through that I had no data. So it was important that, because Google is fine. Well, in fact, Google in Morocco was completely useless for me because I didn't have data.
Yes.
Well, I did have data, but it just doesn't seem to work for me.
Okay.
And other people swear by Google. I met some Americans. They thought it was amazing, and it just didn't work for me at all. But I also cross-referenced with. So there's another app called Overlander, which I'm sure everybody knows.
Sure.
But in case you don't, that's highly recommended. And that was a great app because that, people share road conditions and information and places to stay and border post info and visa info, etc. So you can get all of that together in one place. So that app is really important. But in terms of navigation, it was mainly maps.me.
Okay. Yeah, maps.me are pretty good because you can also save waypoints to get to and things like that, which is great.
Pinning was fantastic. It was a great benefit because what I would do was I never knew the exact condition of the roads for the day. So I kind of had a plan A, B, and if impossible, if everything went perfectly well, C.
Yes.
So I would pin those places that that I had identified that I could stop.
Yes.
Of course, the conditions were bad. I would stop earlier, and if the conditions were good, I could stop at C, for example.
Yes.
So I kind of made sure that I always had a plan B and C.
Correct. Well, that's great. So what was your route matting? What was your route mapping that you used on that picture on your Instagram with the numbers that's going all the way?
That's actually just a Google map. And what I did was I pinned all the locations where I stopped. But I did that on Google Maps, but I also used an app on my phone called Find Penguin. And I used that just for myself. Other people use something called Polar Steps. I just didn't use Polar Steps, and I certainly didn't want, some people share their Polar Steps so that everybody in the world can see where they are. And yes. I just thought, as a woman on my own, that wasn't particularly a clever thing to try.
And that's pretty good. I must admit that I know a few people that have been, fans have rocked up and just said, oh, we've seen where you are, so we come to see you tonight because we've been I wouldn't say chasing, but following you. So that's pretty interesting. Stalking. I'm going to go and have a look at
those. But yeah, so you can. Polar Steps is great, but it's a Find Penguin was just an app on my phone, and it would tell me that I was in a new place, and it would remind me to pin it, and I would just pin it, and then I would, when I was in another new place or in another new country,
yes,
it would remind me again. So. For me, that kind of is a great reminder for me of all the places, because you do, they all start to eventually merge into each other.
Yeah.
and it's a great way to remember the route. And with Find Penguin, you can actually add photographs and videos if you have the data. I didn't have the data, so most of the time I had a SIM card for pretty much every country I drove through.
Yes.
So it was, and data, kind of went up and down in price.
I think it's I must admit, I think you're a guru on Facebook, both on Facebook, but mostly in Instagram, because what you've done is you've actually done a highlight for every country that you've been through. So I think it's fantastic, because you can go back and find the pictures and things like that have maybe not made it to the. I can see you've got Mauritania, Morocco, Senegal. I mean, that's fantastic. I think the way that you've done it is amazing. And as we know, every picture says 1,000 words, and I'm sure it will bring back a flurry of thoughts when sitting somewhere in Morocco looking at the blue framed house, or whatever it is, however you want to remember.
Exactly, yeah. It's great to, because I've been writing the book. A lot of people wanted me to write the book on the journey. So because I've been writing the book, I've been going through the photographs, and I realized how many photographs I didn't share. And it's been great actually reliving the whole journey again. Through the photographs and the voice clips that I did. I didn't, traveling on my own gave me certain limitations. I realized when I was in Morocco that if I stopped every 5 minutes to photograph every mountain and rock and tree and whatever have you, I was never getting home.
You would still be traveling. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Yes, because I'm on my own, so it means I have to stop the car, I have to get out the car, I have to, it was just a whole mission. So I got pretty adept at taking photographs from the car as I was driving.
It's amazing how we adapt to simple things. You're like, I wanted this most professional photo today, but tomorrow I actually couldn't care. Whatever, just take the photo and move on.
Exactly. For me, it was kind of like, in a lot of ways, I didn't, I did an interview some years ago, and I said, I didn't do this about a year ago. I said, I didn't do this journey for anyone. Yeah. I did this journey for me. Yes. And so for me, what was most important was that I got the photograph, which reminded me of where I'd been, and, that had been a memory sort of jolter. Rather than the perfect photograph. And, one guy actually said to me, "Wow, you take great photographs. What camera do you use?" And I went, "Whatever phone isn't broken at the time."
Exactly. Yeah, it's brilliant. You know what? I mean, if you ask any photographer and you say, what's your favorite camera that you use, and it's the one that's closest to you, and generally it's in your pocket, So
exactly,
it just makes it a lot more simpler to navigate. And the way phones are these days, it's completely crazy. I mean, my iPhone 11 Pro takes photos that you get out of a professional photographer that has to sit there editing. So
yeah,
it's
for me, I couldn't have done it, to be honest. To consider doing this journey before the advent of the internet and apps and smartphones would have been pretty daunting. But I admire anybody and everybody who has done it with a map, just a map and a camera. I can read maps perfectly well, but with just a map and a sort of Hail Mary going wherever you're going. The apps and the phone were absolutely vital to me, and of course kept me in touch with people. So everybody knew that I was okay, which kind of helped me as well.
That's. I mean, so I use an iPad Pro now. I had an iPhone 11, and then they stole it 2 weeks after lockdown, and a bunch of other equipment. And I use for my humanitarian work, I actually use a Garmin InReach Mini now, which is for tracking, and an iPad the iPad Mini Pro. So for me, I have to go and find a village that isn't necessarily on a map, which is kind of awesome, because I do drive a big Defender, but with big tires, and I'm gonna try and understand your methodology on your tires that you used. But again, I just want to say this to every guy out there listening to this. You have been shamed by a lady that drove through some of the most treacherous not necessarily wet, but treacherous, roads out there with standard, tar tires. And it's a bit, I wouldn't say embarrassing, but it's going to definitely open a few eyelids. And I know you told me, I think it was yesterday, that you never had a puncture. Is that right?
I had two slow leaks. And one in Morocco, I managed to get a bolt in my tire somehow, and one in when I got to Cameroon. So I had those repaired, but I never changed a tire, and I never had. I did change the tires. My front tires were worn out when I got to Namibia, okay. And I changed my front tires. But I drove. I don't even know what those tires were. They were on the van when I got them. So all the men are going, "Oh my god!" Because I don't know what the obsession is with men and tires. So they're like, "Oh, how many tires?" First of all, I only went with one spare tire, which I have yet still to bring down and use.
Really?
Ever, so knock wood. And they when I said, people are like, how many spare tires, especially the men, how many spare tires have you got? I go, one. No, you should be going with two. And I'm like, well, I've only got enough money for one, and I haven't got anywhere to put the another one. So it's one. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
And I really, as I said, I've never pulled it. It's under my van. So the other thing that people may not know yet is that I drove a 20-year-old Ford Transit 2-wheel drive through Africa. So
going from bad to worse for us men.
So no tire changes except the complete. When I did a service and everything, I changed the front tires. But no tire changes at all.
That is amazing. I must admit, I'm not a big fan of carrying two tires. I think a lot of people get a lot more paranoid than what they should. So they then create a way to spend money and rebuild a whole bumper just to add on an extra tire. I only carry one, and I've had one scenario last year where I had two perfectly aligned punctures on the left side of my vehicle, and
wow.
I ended up having to lie underneath the vehicle 7:00 at night. The sun had just gone down. Elephants and lions were starting to roam. This is about 70 kilometers north of Maun in Botswana, and everyone was running around, trying to settle down in their houses so that to get out of the firing line of the lions and the elephants that started to roam. So I was there, still trying to fix two punctures. It was pretty awesome. It's one of those stories that you're not going to
I can say one thing is that by the time I got to everybody else on the road that was on the road when I was on the road, either ahead of me or behind me, was driving a 4x4, and you guys punish those bloody vehicles.
Yeah,
You drive them hard, man. I was going slow. I mean, my top speed on any road, if I could get to the top speed, I mean, there were days when I spent only in first and second gear. But my top speed is like 80 kilometers an hour. That's it. And when I'm on bad roads, I don't punish my car. This is my only vehicle. This was my home and my ride. There was no way I was punishing it.
Sure.
But a lot of you guys, sure. I've watched you, man. You punish those vehicles, and to be honest, I got to Togo, and nothing had been wrong with my van, and I was like, and everybody else had gearbox problems or wheel problems or some other problem, and I was like, shit, maybe there's something wrong with my van that I don't know about. There must be.
May it only end when I arrive home.
Because I haven't had
But it is true, So, and I think the one thing just to mention on that is that a lot of these vehicles go into certain terrains that are not designed for tar roads, and they do put a lot of pressure on the engines and on the drivetrain and the axles and things like that. So also having a roof above you and not in your vehicle, there's a lot of scenarios. I'm not trying to justify it, and you are right. some guys do go quite hardcore on their vehicles, but your vehicle is a very different design vehicle. And just talking about design, I mean, I think it's a good time to embarrass men again and just tell you that you designed inside your vehicle perfectly well and nice and cozy and comfy, and yourself, you built it yourself. I listened to a I listened to a lovely chat you had with Marion and Anatoly on your website, and there you basically said that you found scrap wood on the side of the road somewhere and you would use it. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of my van on the inside is recycled wood or reclaimed wood. So my nephew has a workshop in Barcelona, and he does shop interiors and he does wood art and that sort of thing. But so he has a lot of wood that, you know, either hasn't been used or he's reclaimed or whatever. And in Barcelona, they have a habit on one day a week. You put anything out on the street, whether it's sofa or tables or chairs or wood or tiles or building materials, whatever, they'll come one night a week. At night, they'll come and pick it all up and take it all away. And so if it's on the street, it means that it's not wanted. So people will pick it up. So I came out one day and I saw some perfectly good pieces of wood. And I was like, I can use those, I'm sure, for something. And they turned into my bench, you know. So my bench, my sofa in the van is made out of the wood I reclaimed off the street. So yeah,
lovely.
But I built the inside. I learned how. It's not perfect, but to be honest, I look at, you know, especially in America and the UK, people build the interiors of their vans, and they're super. I mean, I keep looking at them thinking, wow, I did a really shit job, because these are wonderful. But then I also realized that the shaking and the shuddering that my van had to go through on the roads in Africa, these people are not driving on the roads that I drove on. There are certain things that just would not have been suitable to. So I kept mine very simple and very functional. It has a bed across the back with storage, and it's got two chests of drawers, one facing the front, one facing the back. So my bed rests on the chest of drawers, with storage down the sides at the back of the drawers. And on the one side, it's got my solar battery, so I got solar. And then just storage and my tools, because I've got my drill and my this, that, and the other, and glues and Sikaflex and everything else. And then at the front, I've got a little kitchen area, a wardrobe, and a seating area. And I've got a place for my porta potty. I have a portable toilet, which I would not go without. And I had a shower on top of the roof, but I never quite got it to work correctly because the heat was just too intense for the piping. So it kept springing a leak. But otherwise than that, you know, I had a little kitchen. I had a cooker, 2-plate cooker and a sink. And it all worked perfectly. And I lived in my van literally several months before I left. And then again, when I got to Zimbabwe, I stayed in it for several more months. So it was almost 2 years that I lived in my van.
You know, so how many nights did you, well, I wouldn't say nights. I mean, let's look at percentages. Along your route, did you pretty much 90% stay in your van, or did you luxury out into an Airbnb or a mate's house or something like that?
Firstly, I didn't have the money for Airbnbs. And when I camped out. I camped out mainly in like missions, or, you know, sometimes people would let me park in their compounds or whatever. But I would say 90% of the time, I met some amazing people along the way who insisted that I stay with them. So I stayed with some lovely people in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire. I stayed with some people in Angola, in Luanda. I stayed with some lovely people for a few days. Again, at Calendula Falls in Angola, the people there insisted I stay with them in the Posada. Then in Windhoek, I did a house sit for 10 days, which my car went in for service, and I got the tires changed and stuff like that, and I cleaned her out, etc. So, and washed everything. Yeah, sure. And just about every single night I spent in the van.
That is awesome, you know, because we get so used to our own environment that you end up when you sleep in someone else's bed, it becomes like a little bit it's a little bit weird. I'm not so sure. I'm quite cozy with this, and I've had that after 2 weeks in my vehicle. I mean, I have a rooftop tent, and I come home and I open my t-shirt drawer and I'm like, I don't need all these t-shirts. Why have I got 20 t-shirts? I only wear one at a time, and I only wear the one that I pick up at the top at the time. So, you end up realizing how much we can live with and how much junk we can carry. It's crazy, completely crazy.
Well, there's so much that we can live without. I have like 20 plastic boxes in Barcelona that are my personal belongings, and I have my van, and that's it. I don't have anything else. So, and the problem with sleeping with people was people were very kind and very generous, but it always I have back problems, so it always killed my back when I was sleeping in somebody else's bed. But anyway, at least the showers were always wonderful.
Nothing like a good shower. I'm a big fan of getting the right shower. I would actually buy a shower head and change the shower head for the shower that I was going to do, because there's nothing worse than standing in one of those showers and it's so full of sulfur and lime that when you stand underneath, the water goes everywhere other than straight down, and it's just pointless. So I'm a sticky shower guy. Just having a look quickly. I'm just looking at the map. I found a link.
Don't try that. Don't try that if you ever go to West Africa, because truly most of the time you're just going to get what you get.
which is fine. Let me tell you a quick story. So I'm with my wife in a little town called Nanuki in northern Kenya, Nakuru. Sorry, and we're staying at the Nakuru sports club, which is doesn't sound as fantastic as it wasn't as fantastic as it sounds. And I climb in the bath, which had this Italian-made shower head that was the heater coupled with the shower head. So it was like this one big unit. And I went to remove the unit and got completely electric shocked while standing in the shower with the water coming down. And it was an eye opener. I couldn't even call my wife to say, come turn it off, because I was being shocked. It was completely not awesome. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that from Morocco, from the minute that you get to South Morocco until you get to, I think it was probably Angola, there was no such thing as hot water. And to be honest, if the water was even warm, because it's been hot all day, it was like, damn, why is this water so warm, man? Where's the cold water? Because it is so hot. It's inconceivable how hot it is. It's so, I got used to spending, the minute you hit Senegal, it's just this wave of heat, and it just never ceases. And this was winter the dry season. I'm grateful that I did the dry season. I wouldn't recommend to anybody, even if you're in a great big 4x4, try to avoid the rainy season, because when it comes down, it's like, I was in Togo and it started to come. I was like, I thought it was going to be the end of the world. It comes down.
It just doesn't stop.
Torrent. All night long, So, and that was the rains are coming kind of warning, rather than the rains are here. So by all accounts, no, I don't want to do, and by the condition of the roads, I definitely don't want to do the rainy season. But yeah, cold water is all you get, and you're grateful for it. I can
imagine. So Dot, did you have any countries that you specifically wanted to spend time in, and certain countries that you're like, oh well, this isn't really a big deal for me, can I move on? Did you have any? I know Western Sahara, for example, Mauritania. I think it's got incredible beaches, but the distances between places there are quite vast. I mean, how did you plan fuel between stops, for example, going into the Gambia and into some of those West African countries? Nigeria, there's a lot of fuel. Gabon, there's a lot of fuel. Cameroon, and that. I mean, did you have any areas that you thought, no, I want to stay here a lot longer, or I'm going to make it an extra 4 or 5 days, or did you not really plan it that far in advance?
No, so if to answer your first question is what countries did I like and did I probably like less? I love Morocco. Morocco, I would say I could have spent 3 months there. It was just so incredible and so beautiful. Um, I Western Sahara, or don't call it Western Sahara when you're in Morocco because they will give you grief. So it's called the Southern.
Okay, got it.
Because it is classified as part of Morocco. But yes, the distances from as you go south are enormous. But I never went below a half a tank of fuel before I started looking for more fuel, which really helped. And I can do my van is in miles, so I can do about 500 miles.
That's pretty good.
Tank. So I have a pretty good. Yeah, no, she's quite good. So Mauritania was the poorest country I ever came across. I mean, the goats eat plastic and the donkeys eat cardboard, and there's barely a blade of grass. It's what was fascinating was the fact that we think desert is just one color, but it's actually it's rocky and it's sandy and it's red sand and orange sand and beige sand, and it's quite fascinating. It's not my ideal landscape. The Other than that, I loved Guinea. Guinea, I had the hardest time on the road, one of the roads in Guinea, but I call it Hell's Highway. But Guinea is beautiful, and they love Zimbabweans for some reason. Somehow Robert Mugabe was there at some stage, and if you say Zimbabwe, because I carried my Zimbabwean flag all the way through Africa on my passenger side, and I became very adept at one phrase in French, which was "Je suis Zimbabwean, la lingua Zimbabwe anglais."
Lovely.
Zimbabwean, and the language in Zimbabwe is English. So don't expect me to speak a lot of French here. Okay. So yeah, I love Guinea. I can't say there's not a lot to Togo. Although I did get overlanders disease in Togo. I don't know. I planned a stop in Ghana. I stayed on a beach for 5 days. I was finished. I was tired, and I knew that I needed to rest. So I spent 5 days on a beach in Ghana, and then when I got to Togo, I had a great camp. Well, it wasn't really a campsite. It was like a chalet, these little chalets on the beach, and that. And I had some hard standing, and it was lovely. It was very beautiful. And it was cooler because we were on the beach, slightly, marginally cooler. And I got overlanders disease. And I don't know if you know what overlanders disease is, but for anyone who's listening who doesn't, it's when you stop without rhyme or reason or necessity. you just end up somewhere and you don't feel like going. And that's what happened to me. After a week, I was like, no, I've got to go now. I've got to go. I think what was happening was I needed to tackle this Nigerian visa, and I had to go to
eating you to get it done. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't spend long. I spent like 48 hours in DRC, mainly because a lot of people told me how dangerous it was, and I'm still not convinced that it was mortally dangerous. But I'm sure that it isn't as entirely safe as a lot of people. I'm sure it's not as bad. I'm sure it's not perfect, but I found that I do the wave test, so I have a little test. As I drive through past villages and past people on the road, I wave. And their enthusiasm and eagerness to wave back at me tells me whether it's a good country.
It's a good way to do
it. Cameroon failed, but everywhere else, Nigeria, the people in Nigeria are marvelous. The people in Nigeria are absolutely amazing. They would shout at you because I have my window half open because I only have Africa air conditioning. And they would shout at you as you go past, and if you waved, they were like, "Wave!" So they were fantastic. It was marvelous. I loved it. But so I loved Angola.
Really?
Wow. I had this. I had this impression of Angola being this war-torn, sort of broken country, and it is beautiful, really, really beautiful. I highly recommend that people go and visit Angola. It's very beautiful.
DRC, sorry.
Other than that, I love everything. I love.
Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, sorry. I was just going to say I loved. There was always something about every country that was beautiful, or notable, and some things that were okay or not nice.
That's the thing is, my daughter asked me a while ago. She's 6 and she loves overlanding, and she says to me, "Daddy, which is your favorite country to live in?" And I said, "My girl, every country I've been to in Africa has something special about it that I completely adore." So it's not like I'd be willing to just get up and leave and go there. I mean, I wanted to move to Kenya a few years ago, because to get around to Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania and all of that from there is superb. But every country has something amazing. I mean, DRC, the areas that you were going through, just looking at your map, are not bad areas in DRC. I mean, DRC people generally, from my experience being there, leave you alone. Unless you talk to them, they will answer and respond. But they don't. They're not necessarily rude people. It just depends on, like everything, it's all political. And the politics hangs around the mines and the oil and gas and things like that. So that is right on the eastern side near Kivu and those areas, where you were right on the west-hand side, which is the complete opposite in a busy area, being the ports.
Yeah. Yeah. So the guy at the border said to me, "Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop. If you stop in a place where there are other people." So to me, it was like, wouldn't it make more sense to stop in a place when there are no people? Anyhow, I got lost. I couldn't. There were loads of sand tracks, and I just couldn't figure out which way I should go. And I think I could see on the map that I was going in the wrong direction, but I couldn't get back. So I saw a guy on the road, and I stopped and I asked him, and I said, "Which way do I need to go?" And he was like, "No, you can go, because I'm going to Maunda." And he said, "You can keep going; it'll be there." And I knew he was going as well, and I just thought it was a little bit sort of shameful if I just left him there on the side of the road walking. So I said to him, "Do you want a lift?" So I'm probably the only white woman that anybody ever, picked up a guy in DRC to take me into Maunda.
It's a story he's never going to forget. That's for
and
sure.
Then he helped me out. He got. Well, he helped me out. He helped me get a SIM card. He helped me get change some dollars, and helped me get fuel, because I would have missed the fuel station altogether, because it was such an old fuel tank pump. I would never have seen it. And I chatted to the guy. Here I'm standing in Maunda, talking to all the guys and having, cracking a joke, and it was great. And I didn't think DRC was as bad as, and as I said, there are dangerous parts of the whole of Africa. I just didn't happen to go through any of them.
I think the way that you planned it and what you did was really good, because it clearly shows that it's very possible without causing too much anxiety and drama. Because some people generally stick up to the top left-hand corner of West Africa. They don't really do the Nigerias, the Cameroons, Guinea, and places like that. So I think you did it really well. I must admit, I'm just looking at the map; it's impressive.
I can say that I had the best time. The people were amazing, but I also came with an attitude that wasn't that I expected Africa to be like Europe. I came with an African attitude, and I came with respect. So I would always greet people. I would shake their hands if they wanted their hands. If they offered a handshake, I would smile at them. I think the thing that white people especially forget is, having lived in Europe, I know that people see black people as intimidating, and it's usually because it's fear of the unknown. I see black people and I'm like, where are you from? And in Europe, if I was a black person walking around Europe with a sullen face, people would consider me intimidating. As well as the fact that as a white person in dark Africa, in black Africa, because they don't see a lot of white people, they're not the norm and they're not common. If I had come with an expectation of and an aggressive attitude, I'm quite certain that I would have gotten the same back. so I came with a friendly, warm, I always smiled at people. I always made a joke, just kept it light. And let me tell you, it's not like it was always fantastic, because there was certainly enough irritating police checks. But I was always kept it on the light side. But I also knew where the line was, when it was like, no, that's not happening. Sorry, that's not happening. But I think we need to remember that when you're traveling, courtesy is courtesy. And, I was always met, pretty much 95% of the time, met with equal courtesy and
it's a brilliant way to do it. And many people do sometimes rock up with a bit of a, do you know who I think that I am type of attitude, and that immediately,
exactly.
That, we all see that from a mile away. And I think people pick up on that very, very quickly. And the more nonsense you give them, I can assure you, they will keep you there for as long as they want you to be there. And especially at border posts.
But it's exactly the same in Europe. It's exactly the same in Europe. If you go to any bureaucrat in Europe and you go there with an attitude, let me tell you what
Here we
he's
go.
going to
I'll
do.
see you.
Or she.
But it's...
Yeah, go sit over there.
Doc, tell me, what was your favorite modification that you did on your vehicle? What was your number one thing that you enjoyed the most? Was it a table that you used all the time? A chair? Was it the kettle, the stove, the toilets? Obviously, the shower didn't really work well, so that's out the equation.
I can tell you what the most important addition was to my journey,
really?
And that was the toilet, because I'm a woman on my own, and while a lot of people look at me and say, "Wow, that was very risky," and "Wow, was it safe?" and I didn't go into this with total ignorance and sort of like la 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 la, attitude. I had alarms on. I put extra alarms on my windows so that if anybody touched the windows, the alarms would go. So I switched those on at night. I would lock up. I had curtains. My windows are blacked out. So when I was in the back, you couldn't really see that I was inside. And I was secure. I knew where my keys were. If I needed to, that's why I took a van, was because if I had a situation where I didn't feel safe, I would just jump in the front seat and drive off. So I always knew where my keys were, etc. So when in the middle of the night I needed to go to the loo, or on a couple of occasions I had a bad stomach, the toilet was the number one thing that I was like, I don't have to get up or go outside or find a place where there's a toilet or, anything. I just pull out my toilet and that's it, So to me, that was, I'm a bit of a girl when it comes to that. I mean, I don't mind going to the bush or anything, but it was just so much more convenient and so much more comfortable just not to have to worry about.
Completely agree. Did that funny stomach come from those snails that you had in maybe? I don't know, because I had a snail. No. I was with the Prince of Lagos. We were having dinner, and because every region has a prince and a king and everything's still there, and I had the guy says, "What do you want to order?" And I said, "Oh, I really feel like a snail." He goes, "Oh yeah, we have snails here." So obviously we have this perception of these, decent sized, small thumb size snails, and they come in a nice pot and garlic butter, the whole story. Anyway, these 3 snails come. Each snail is the size of my fist, and they're huge, and this was in Lagos, and I ate 1.5. It was my whole meal. I had to send my actual meal back. I was like, I'm sorry, there's no ways I'm going to have these. These things are too huge. No one says anything that they're the size of a flipping mountain. Do you know what you ate?
No, I got a bad. Yeah, I got a bad stomach twice from having salad. I was just so desperate for a salad, and I bought. It was once was at a guest house that I was staying at, and and it's just the water.
That's right.
They wash their vegetables in the local water, and I'd been very careful to only drink out of bottled water. So I got a bad stomach from salads twice, and once from a pate. In Angola. I'd bought a pate, and I thought, "Oh wow, amazing pate! Wow, what luxury!" And it was a little one in foil, but within a day, the heat in the car must have just turned it. And
wow. I mean,
I got a bad stomach.
I've been a firm believer of eating all the local food, but also being like you've said, be very mindful in what you eat. You know,
Totally.
if they wash the fruit, like in Madagascar, they give you bottled water, everything's perfectly fine, but then they wash the fruit and the salad stuff with tap water, which is pointless.
Fruit.
So, you know, you then, you within half an hour, you're like, thanks for that. I'll cancel today. I'll see you tomorrow.
You have to be careful. Yeah. You really have to be careful. And it's hard. I mean, I was on the road for 8.5 months. It's hard to be vigilant. So just two more things quickly.
When did you leave and when did you arrive in Zim?
I left at the end of November, the 24th of November. I landed in Morocco, and I arrived back in Zimbabwe on the 8th of August last year. So I departed in 2018, and I arrived back
because
in 2019.
I mean that's a perfect amount of time to actually give every area what it's due. You know, because some people go there, have a camp, take a photo, move on. You know, and
no. I couldn't do that. I was driving and I was doing everything else, and the heat was punishing, and I couldn't drive every single day. It was, you know, some of the roads. I mean, there is no road between Nigeria and Cameroon. It was 3 days solid on dirt tracks, following GPS coordinates, going through rivers, and you know, crossing rickety bridges, and assessing, you know, what the road condition was, and trying to get over rocks. And it was so, you know, after a drive like that, I took 5 days. I took 5 days in a monastery, parked up in a monastery under the trees next to the coffee plants, and just chilled out, you know, because I had to rest for my health. I'm 60 now. I'm 61 now, but for my health and my state of mind, you know, to be sharp when you're on the road, because you're driving, every meter of road is a decision to be made, and you know, it takes a lot out of you. So when I got to Namibia, I had to switch on the radio really loud so that I didn't have to fall asleep, because I was so unaccustomed to good roads for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers straight, you know, tar roads without any potholes.
Low and steady wins the race. And I think you've definitely proven that. So I'm going to ask you one more last question, and I think we both have to go. But what was your best and your worst moment on the track on your 8 months?
Wow. I had so many best moments, you know, that made me laugh or smile or whatever. I think the best, I can't define it as one moment, but it would be driving through a village or driving somewhere, and the people would just be, you know, waving at me and shouting at me, and, you know, sort of greeting me in a wonderful, friendly way. And that just completely warmed me every single time. I just loved it. It made me smile from ear to ear. The worst moments were anything to do with my car. I lost my clutch in Nigeria. Fortunately, I was traveling with some Americans. We were traveling in tandem, and they towed me. And it became a very sticky situation. We ended up not being able to go to where we needed to go. And then we got rescued by some Nigerians, and we ended up parked up at Radio Nigeria radio tower in their compound for like 3 days. And they organized the mechanic, and they did everything for us. It was great. But yeah, anything to do with my van. And I got stuck in sand in Mauritania, you know, just me and the sand and nothing. And then this very last story I'll tell you. So I'm standing out, I get out the car, I'm walking around trying to assess how I can possibly get out of this. Because the thing about my van is it never looks like it's stuck in sand, but don't try, because you just dig yourself further in. And she's a rear wheel drive, so it's just like worse. I'm walking around trying to assess it, and along comes on another track this old, you know, like 60s, 70s black Mercedes, and stops. And it's about, I don't know, 40 meters away from where I am. And out of the car pile like 8 guys
Yeah.
in flowing robes and sort of pajamas, you know, because they're all Muslims. So they've got these long shirts with the pants, and they all come walking towards me. And I had a moment, I have to confess, I did have a moment where I thought this can either go horribly wrong or it can go perfectly right. So I did the best form of attack I have ever found, and I did this throughout my journey. I went, bonjour, bonjour, merci, bonjour. With the greatest of enthusiasm, with, you know, like the expectation that they were going to help me. And they did. And they came, they helped me, and it cost me 10 euros. And it was the cheapest roadside assistance I've ever had. And there's a photograph on my WhatsApp, on my Facebook, where there's a guy in a white robe, and all the other guys are pushing. And this guy, I wanted to take a photograph of them pushing, and he would not get out of the way. Anyway, so eventually I was like, oh, screw this. I'm just going to take the photograph. Move on. So I took the photograph, and it turned out to be like the best photograph of the whole journey. Yeah, it turned out to be a great photograph. But it was, and that was what I call Africa roadside assistance. It's always throughout the whole of Africa. There was always somebody within 10 minutes to help you.
I think your heart shows exactly how you've done it and how people perceive you. And I just want to applaud you, and well done. It's been amazing. I just want you to take 2 minutes and just tell people what you are doing in Bulawayo at the moment, you know, just so that they can understand and follow your social media to try and get traffic to help you. Can you just give me a brief overview, because we are running out of time, a brief overview on what it is that's driving you at the moment?
Okay, so I came back to Zimbabwe because I really felt that I could make some kind of contribution. I'm a business coach and an entrepreneur strategist, and I really work with small businesses. So that's one of the things that I'm doing here is I'm doing some pro bono coaching, and I'm helping a business organization to strategize, regenerating business, and helping people, even the small traders, to make, you know, to earn a living. Because the people of Zimbabwe are very proud people. They would rather work than beg. So my work around that is my coaching. But I really set out on this journey with an intention of raising awareness around girls' education and how vital the education of girls, especially the gap between junior school and high school, when so many girls fall out of the system and when they are the most vulnerable. And my little small non-profit is called Kusasa, which means tomorrow in the Ndebele language, which is my local language. And it's about how education of girls is the number one thing that will change the continent of Africa. It will transform Africa, because there's not one single negative to the education of girls. And we desperately need as many girls to be educated as quickly as possible, because in 30 years, the population of Africa is set to double. And within that, you know, doubling the population means double the problem. So educating girls is the solution.
There you have it.
To me,
I completely
is the solution
agree
to
with
Africa.
you. Girl power all the way. They don't think, they think clearly, a lot more clearly than men, because men only buy the wrong ties and get lots of flats and problems. So, so listen, Dot, thank you very much for your time. I'm completely in awe, and I love it. I keep looking at your photos. I found the one with the guy in the white robe, and everyone pushing. It looked like he was the supervisor, which is completely wrong. But I really love it, and thank you very much. And I will definitely stay in touch and have a blessed day. And I really wish that your outreaches go further than this, a lot further than what you thought. Cheers, Dot. Bye bye.